Farmers digging a well in 1974 unearthed a single terracotta head, a discovery that would crack open one of history's deepest secrets. This chance find revealed a silent, subterranean army, thousands strong, built to guard the tomb of China's first emperor, but its true purpose remains an enigma that has baffled experts for decades. By the end of this, you will understand the profound and startling theories behind why this clay legion was created. Was it a simple imperial guard for the afterlife, or something far more ambitious, designed for conquest in the spirit world itself? Why does this ancient army face east, away from the emperor's tomb, and what secrets still lie sealed within the unopened central mound? What do you believe drives a person to build an eternal army? That single terracotta head stared up from the soil, its empty eyes witnessing the sun for the first time in over 2,000 years. The men who found it, farmers named Yong Jifa and his brothers, were not searching for history. They were simply digging a well in a dry field in the Lintong district, hoping to find water for their crops. Their shovels struck not water but baked clay. At first, they thought it was a piece of an old temple or perhaps a statue of a god. But as they carefully brushed away the earth, the full, life-sized face of a soldier emerged. The shock was immediate and profound. They had unearthed a ghost. Word of the strange discovery spread quickly through the village, a mixture of awe and superstitious fear. Some believed they had disturbed a burial ground and angered ancient spirits. The local authorities were notified, and soon archaeologists from the nearby province of Shaanxi arrived on the scene. What they began to uncover would dwarf that initial find beyond anyone's wildest imagination. The farmer's well shaft had inadvertently pierced the roof of an underground chamber. This was not a lone statue, but a sprawling, organized pit numbered by archaeologists as Pit 1. As the excavations widened, the true scale began to reveal itself. Row upon row of terracotta warriors emerged from the darkness, an entire army frozen in time. The Chinese archaeological teams recognized the monumental significance almost instantly. This was not just a collection of old pottery, it was a meticulously crafted military formation, complete with infantry, chariots, and officers. The sheer ambition of the project pointed to one conclusion: this could only belong to the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. The world was about to learn of a secret that had been buried for millennia. How could something so vast have remained hidden for so long, silently waiting just beneath the feet of generations of farmers? That single terracotta head belonged to a man who forged an empire from fire and blood. His name was Qin Shi Huang, and his story is the key to unlocking the army's secret. He became the king of the state of Qin in 247 BCE, a mere boy of just 13, inheriting a kingdom locked in a brutal period of conflict known as the Warring States. For centuries, 7 major states had battled for supremacy across the land we now call China. But this young king possessed a terrifying ambition. He would not be content with ruling just one state. Over the next 25 years, he systematically conquered all his rivals one by one. In the year 221 BCE, his victory was complete. For the first time in history, the vast and diverse territories were unified under a single, powerful ruler. He declared himself Qin Shi Huang Dai, a title that translates to the first sovereign emperor of Qin. He gave the entire country its name, China. This was not just a political leader, this was a revolutionary. He standardized everything from the written characters used across the land to the axle widths of carts, so they could all travel on the same new roads he built. He connected and strengthened the separate walls of the northern states, creating the first version of the Great Wall to protect his new domain. He was a visionary, but his vision was enforced with absolute ruthlessness. He crushed dissent, burying scholars alive and burning books he deemed dangerous to consolidate his power. He ruled with an iron fist, believing his methods were the only way to maintain the hard-won unity of his empire. Yet for all his power over the world of the living, he was consumed by a deep, gnawing fear of the world of the dead. He was utterly obsessed with achieving immortality. He dispatched fleets of ships with hundreds of young men and women into the eastern seas, searching for the mythical Pinglai Mountain, home of the immortals. He consumed potions laden with mercury, believing they would grant him eternal life, ironically poisoning himself in the process. This desperate, paranoid drive to conquer death itself is the ultimate clue. Why would a man so fearful of dying spend decades and countless resources building a subterranean army? The Terracotta warriors were not an act of humble preparation for the afterlife. They were the ultimate security detail for a ruler who believed his greatest battle would begin not in this world but in the next. He was preparing for a war in the spirit realm, and he intended to win. This underground empire stretched far beyond the army of soldiers. The silent Terracotta Legion, as vast as it is, represents only the outer guard of a city for the dead, a sprawling necropolis built to mirror the emperor's sprawling capital above. The entire mausoleum complex is a subterranean world covering an estimated 56 square kilometers. To grasp that scale, picture a city built entirely underground, with the Terracotta Army stationed in its eastern outskirts, standing watch over the approaches. At the very heart of this vast complex lies the central tomb mound itself, an unopened earthen pyramid that rises from the landscape. This is believed to be the final resting place of Qin Shi Huang, and it remains sealed to this day, a treasure protected by more than just clay and bronze. The army pits are just the beginning. Archaeologists have discovered a network of other pits surrounding the central mound, each one containing a different facet of the emperor's court and life. There are pits filled with terracotta acrobats and strongmen, a permanent troupe of entertainers for the afterlife. Other pits contain life-sized figures of bureaucrats and officials, their hands poised as if ready to administer the empire for all eternity. There are even stables with the skeletons of real horses and two magnificent bronze chariots discovered in 1980, each one a masterpiece of ancient metalwork with thousands of separate components. This was not merely a tomb, it was a perfect functioning replica of his entire world, frozen in time beneath the earth. Every person, every animal, every chariot had a role to play in the emperor's next great campaign. The sheer immensity of this project forces us to ask, what could possibly be so important, so dangerous, that it required an entire city and an army of thousands to protect it for eternity? The sheer organization of Pit 1 is a military blueprint carved in clay. Stepping into this vast subterranean hall is like witnessing an army frozen mid-march, a snapshot of imperial power from over 2 millennia ago. The pit stretches longer than 3 football fields laid end to end, and it is divided into 11 long, parallel corridors. These corridors are not filled with a chaotic crowd of statues. They are arranged with meticulous, terrifying precision. At the front, 3 rows of vanguard archers stand ready, their uniforms light for rapid movement. Behind them, the main force of infantrymen and war chariots forms the crushing weight of the army. Each chariot, made of wood that has long since decayed, was pulled by 4 terracotta horses and flanked by lines of armored soldiers. In total, archaeologists estimate this single pit holds around 6,000 individual figures, an entire division waiting for a command that will never come. The formation itself is a masterclass in ancient combat doctrine. The vanguard is positioned to absorb or disrupt an initial enemy charge, while the main body behind them is structured to advance and overwhelm. This is not a ceremonial display, it is a practical, aggressive battle order. Every soldier faces east, the direction from which the emperor's conquered rivals had once come. The overwhelming impression is one of readiness, a force designed not for a parade but for a real, impending conflict. So we are left with a haunting question. What kind of war requires an army of 6,000, organized for tactical combat, to be buried underground? This was not a simple honor guard. It was a deployed fighting force, and its intended enemy must have been a threat of unimaginable scale. But the true tactical genius of this underground army is revealed in Pit 2. While Pit 1 is a massive, overwhelming force, this second pit is the brain of the operation. It is smaller, yet infinitely more complex, a carefully orchestrated blend of specialized units designed to work in perfect, devastating harmony. As you move through its layout, you see the full spectrum of ancient warfare laid bare. At its forefront, rows of kneeling archers are frozen in a single, unified motion. Their bodies are coiled, their arms raised as if they have just released a volley of arrows. Directly behind them stand another unit of archers, poised to fire over the heads of their kneeling comrades. This creates a relentless, staggered barrage, a storm of projectiles meant to soften the enemy lines before the main assault even begins. And then the assault arrives. Flanking these archers are row upon row of war chariots, each one a symbol of mobile, crushing power. But the most revolutionary unit is the cavalry, discovered here for the first time in such a clear military context. These terracotta horsemen are distinct, with shorter, sturdier figures, tight jackets and pants designed for mounted combat. Their horses, alert and ready, stand beside them. This is the key to the entire formation. The chariots provide the heavy punch, the infantry holds the line, but the cavalry offers something new: speed and flanking maneuverability. This is a combined arms army, a military concept so advanced it would not be fully realized again for centuries. Pit 2 is not just a collection of soldiers, it is a living manual of Qin dynasty battlefield doctrine. It shows an understanding that victory requires more than just numbers. It demands the precise integration of different units, each with a specific role to play in a coordinated ballet of destruction. So if Pit 1 is the fist, then Pit 2 is the intricate nervous system that commands it. This level of sophisticated planning forces us to reconsider everything. An honor guard does not need complex battlefield tactics. A spirit army designed for simple protection does not require cavalry charges and layered archer volleys. This was an army built for active, dynamic warfare in the afterlife, prepared to face an enemy that required every tactical advantage it could muster. What kind of opponent could possibly demand such a meticulously crafted, multi-faceted force waiting in the dark? And then there is Pit 3, the smallest and most mysterious of them all. While Pits 1 and 2 roar with the silent clamor of thousands of soldiers, this space whispers with the quiet authority of command. It is shaped like a U, a stark contrast to the rigid, rectangular military formations, and at its heart sits a single, ornate chariot. This is not a vehicle for a frontal charge. It is a command chariot drawn by 4 majestic terracotta horses and flanked by a select group of 68 figures. These are not common infantrymen. They are the high-ranking officers, the generals and strategists of this clay legion. Their presence here transforms the entire complex. You can almost feel the shift in atmosphere, from the chaotic potential of the battlefield to the calculated calm of the war room. The soldiers in the other pits are the body of the army, but the figures in Pit 3 are unmistakably its brain. Their positioning is deliberate, almost ceremonial. They stand in a protective formation around the chariot, their postures less about combat readiness and more about dignified authority. Some hold their hands in a way that suggests they once grasped real bronze weapons, symbols of their rank, while others seem to be in mid-conversation, plotting the movements of the vast forces under their command. This pit completes the military structure in a way that is breathtakingly modern, a clear chain of command stretching from the strategic planners down to the frontline troops. So why bury the generals? An emperor obsessed with immortality would not merely want an army, he would want a competent one, led by the finest tactical minds of his age. He was replicating his entire military apparatus, ensuring that in the next world, his conquests would be directed by the same brilliance that won him his earthly empire. This was not just about having soldiers, it was about having a fully functional, eternally loyal high command. The silent generals of Pit III waited for orders that would launch an eternal campaign, a war without end in a realm only the emperor could see. Yet for all their perfect military order, these soldiers are not identical clones marching in lockstep. Look closely at any one of their faces and you will find a person. Every single one of the thousands of terracotta warriors is unique. This was not a faceless horde, it was an army of individuals. The creation process was a marvel of ancient mass production blended with profound artistry. The bodies, the torsos and limbs were made using a system of prefabricated molds. This assembly line approach allowed the workshops to produce the vast quantity of figures needed for such an immense project. But then came the final, crucial step. After the basic body was assembled, artisans would hand sculpt each soldier's head separately. They used clay to build up faces, to carve expressions, and to craft an astonishing variety of hairstyles and mustaches. They would add ears, shape eyebrows, and define the lines around mouths. Some faces are young and smooth, full of determined vigor. Others are older, with weathered brows and the grim set of a veteran who has seen countless battles. Their hairstyles are a historical record in themselves, tied in intricate top knots or arranged according to precise military rank and regional origin. This was not random artistic flair, it was a deliberate, systematic effort to bestow individuality upon every single figure. The result is an army that feels alive, a collection of souls rather than statues. You can walk along the rows and see the serious gaze of a young recruit next to the calm confidence of a seasoned officer. So why go to such incredible length? If the goal was merely to fill a pit with soldiers, generic figures would have sufficed. This meticulous attention to individuality suggests a deeper, more profound belief. In the worldview of the time, an object could house a spirit. By giving each warrior a distinct face and identity, the creators were not just making art, they were performing a kind of ritual. They were potentially animating each soldier with a unique spirit, creating a real army with real souls to serve their emperor in the next world. This was not a model, it was a living, breathing military force frozen in clay, waiting for the command to awaken and fight a war beyond our own. These soldiers were not always the silent, earthen gray we see today. They were once a riot of brilliant color. When they were first placed in the pits, every single terracotta warrior was lavishly painted in vibrant pigments. Their armor was lacquered a deep, glossy black. Their uniforms were a striking magenta or green, and the accents on their sashes and collars shone with cinnabar red and malachite green. Their faces were painted with flesh tones, their lips a startling red. This was not a drab, monochrome army, but a polychrome spectacle, a vivid and terrifying host standing in the darkness. The preservation of this paint was a technological marvel in itself. Artisans applied a layer of lacquer over the clay as a base, and then painted the colors on top of that. This technique was meant to seal and protect the pigments for eternity. But this careful preparation contained a fatal flaw. When the pits were opened and the air rushed in after 2,000 years, that lacquer layer began to dry and curl within mere seconds. As it shriveled, it took the entire layer of exquisite paint with it, flaking off before the archaeologists' horrified eyes. The vibrant army they had worked so hard to uncover was disappearing in front of them, a ghost fading back into the earth. Today, only a few tiny, preserved flecks of color remain in the crevices of a handful of statues, haunting reminders of the spectacle that was lost the moment the modern world touched it. But the paint was only part of the story. When this army was buried, every single soldier was armed for war. They did not hold ceremonial props or clay imitations. They gripped real, fully functional, and lethally sharp bronze weapons, tens of thousands of them. The infantrymen held long, deadly spears and halberds. The archers once carried powerful crossbows, their triggers intricate mechanisms of bronze. The officers were equipped with elegant, double-edged swords, some so perfectly preserved that when unearthed, their blades could still draw blood with a touch. These were not dull, symbolic objects. This was the standardized, state-of-the-art weaponry of the Qin Imperial Army, the very tools that had conquered China. The significance of this cannot be overstated. An army equipped with real, combat-ready weapons is an army that is expected to fight. A symbolic honor guard would have been given symbolic, non-functional arms. But Qin Shi Huang equipped his subterranean legion with the genuine articles, down to the last arrowhead. This powerfully reinforces the theory that this was intended to be a real, functioning military force in the afterlife. The emperor was not just creating a grand sculpture garden to impress the gods. He was provisioning his troops for actual spiritual combat, arming them to the teeth for battles he believed were inevitable in the world to come. Yet today, the pits are filled with soldiers whose hands are empty, clasping only air. So where did all the weapons go? The tragic answer is that most were looted, and very soon after the emperor's death. When the Qin dynasty collapsed in a massive popular uprising, rebels stormed the mausoleum complex. They broke into the pits, toppled the soldiers, and systematically stripped them of their priceless bronze arms. They set fire to the wooden roof beams, which collapsed and buried the broken army in a layer of ash and rubble, sealing it for centuries. The looters were not interested in the heavy, cumbersome clay statues. They wanted the valuable metal. In their haste, they missed a fortune. Over the decades, archaeologists have recovered over 40,000 individual bronze weapons from the pits, mostly found buried in the soil where they fell during the looting or still clutched in the hands of figures the rebels overlooked. These surviving items are a treasure trove, revealing an industrial level of production and an almost obsessive attention to quality control. Every single arrowhead, every sword, is marked with the name of the master craftsman who made it and the supervising official, a system of accountability that ensured every weapon was perfect. The empty hands of the Terracotta Army are a testament to an ancient crime scene, a robbery that stripped them of their purpose, but those 40,000 surviving weapons are the undeniable proof. This clay legion was built not for show, but for a fight. The empty hands of these warriors point directly to their original purpose. The most widely accepted theory among scholars is that this Terracotta Legion was an imperial guard for the afterlife. To understand this, we must step into the worldview of ancient China, where death was not an end, but a transition to another existence. It was believed that the next world was a direct mirror of the living one, a realm where you would continue your life with all its needs, hierarchies, and dangers. A ruler in this life would be a ruler in the next, but he would need his court, his servants, and most critically, his army to maintain his power and protect him from the spiritual threats that lurked there. This was the core function of the Terracotta Army. It was designed to serve, protect, and help Qin Shi Huang rule his eternal empire, just as his real flesh and blood army had secured his dominion on earth. This belief was not unique to the emperor. For centuries, Chinese burial customs involved placing minqi or spirit objects in tombs. These were miniature clay models of houses, farm animals, and servants, items intended for the deceased to use in the next life. A common person might be buried with a few clay pots and a statuette of a cook, but Qin Shi Huang was no common person. He was the first emperor. His version of minqi was not a simple model of a farm. It was a perfect, life-sized replica of his entire imperial apparatus. The terracotta warriors are, in essence, the ultimate minqi, created on a scale that screams imperial power. They are spirit objects for the most important task imaginable: eternal security and conquest. So this army is more than a guard, it is the enforcement of a promise. It was Qin Shi Huang's way of ensuring that his hard-won unity, the very empire he built, would not dissolve upon his death. He was projecting his power beyond the grave, taking his entire military structure with him to cement his rule for all eternity. But if this was merely a protective force, why the complex battle formations, the cavalry, the combined arms tactics designed for an offensive campaign? A simple guard could stand at attention. This army looks ready to march. Yet this army's own position betrays a deeper, more aggressive purpose. If these warriors were a simple imperial guard, their logic is baffling. They stand over a mile away from the emperor's sealed tomb mound. More strikingly, every soldier, chariot, and officer faces resolutely east. Why would a defensive force turn its back on the very thing it is sworn to protect? The heart of the necropolis, the emperor's resting place, lies to the west behind them. This is not the stance of a bodyguard. This is the posture of an invasion force, or at the very least, an army deployed to face a threat from a specific direction. To understand who that enemy was, we must look at a map of ancient China before its unification. The emperor's homeland, the state of Qin, was located in the west. All of his rivals, the 6 warring states he brutally conquered, lay to the east. His entire campaign of unification was a relentless push from west to east. The direction his Terracotta Army faces is not random, it is the exact bearing of his former enemies. This single, undeniable fact shatters the simple guard theory. An emperor as paranoid and strategic as Qin Shi Huang would not have made a trivial error in the most important project of his afterlife. The eastward orientation was deliberate, screaming of a mission that extended far beyond passive defense. The army was not there to shield his tomb. It was there to project his power eternally towards the lands and the people he had subjugated. He was ensuring that even in death, his dominance over the eastern states would never be challenged. This suggests a terrifying possibility. The Terracotta Army was not built to protect the emperor from unknown spirits, but to actively continue his campaign of conquest in the spirit world, or to forever suppress the vengeful ghosts of the millions who died in his wars and the vanquished aristocrats he had deposed. He was not just planning for an afterlife of peaceful rule. He was preparing for an eternity of war, launching his greatest military asset into the unknown to secure the only thing that truly mattered to him, an empire without end. This cosmic conquest theory transforms the entire necropolis from a tomb into a launch site for immortality. Qin Shi Huang's obsession was not merely to survive death, but to command it. His earthly empire was just the beginning. The sprawling complex with its officials, acrobats, and animals was a complete, self-sufficient universe designed to sustain his campaign for eternity. The army was its spearhead, a force built not to guard a grave but to conquer the heavens. Historical records describe the emperor's profound fear of the spirits and deities that ruled the unseen world. He did not seek to appease them, he sought to dominate them, to become their sovereign. His Terracotta Legion, armed with real weapons and organized for actual combat, was the instrument of this subjugation. It was his plan to impose his will upon the cosmos itself, to force the spirit world to kneel before him just as the warring states had. The presence of every bureaucrat and entertainer served this grand ambition. A cosmic emperor needs a functioning government to administer his new divine territories. He needs performers to celebrate his eternal victories. This was not a hopeful wish for a peaceful afterlife. It was a detailed, strategic blueprint for a hostile takeover of the universe beyond our own. The army facing east takes on a new, even more menacing meaning in this light. The east was the direction of the rising sun, associated with life, renewal, and the mystical isles of the immortals he so desperately sought. By pointing his army in that direction, he was not just threatening old rivals. He was challenging the very source of life and the domain of the gods, declaring his intention to seize immortality by force if he could not find it by other means. He was preparing to march his clay legions into the realm of the divine and conquer it. This was the ultimate purpose of his underground city, to serve as the permanent headquarters for an emperor who refused to be bound by the limits of mortality, a man who would rule forever no matter the cost. The Silent Army stands guard over an even greater secret than conquest. Deep within the unexcavated central tomb, ancient historical texts describe a breathtaking marvel. They tell of a miniature universe created for the emperor, complete with 100 rivers made not of water but of shimmering, liquid mercury. The ceilings were inlaid with pearls to represent the stars, and the geography of his entire empire was mapped out below. This was not just a tomb, it was a cosmic engine, and the mercury was its fuel. For Qin Shi Huang, this toxic, silvery metal was not a poison. It was the very substance of eternal life. In the Taoist alchemical traditions he followed, mercury held a sacred dual nature. It was seen as the essence of the primordial dragon, a substance that could flow like water yet gleam like a metal, capable of transcending its own form. Alchemists believed that by mastering mercury, they could create elixirs that would refine the human body, purging mortality and solidifying the spirit into an immortal form. The emperor consumed these mercury potions in life, a desperate gamble that likely contributed to his death, but his grandest experiment was reserved for his tomb. The rivers of mercury were not a decorative feature. They were the centerpiece of the most ambitious alchemical operation in history, a perpetual machine designed to achieve in death what his potions had failed to do in life. It was meant to continuously refine his spirit, transforming his corpse into an immortal god. This is where the Terracotta Army's purpose becomes terrifyingly clear. They were not just guarding a corpse from spiritual threats, they were protecting a high-stakes alchemical transformation in progress. The entire necropolis was a sacred, fortified laboratory. The officials ensured the cosmic bureaucracy continued to function, the entertainers maintained celestial harmony, and the army, the mighty Terracotta Legion, was the ultimate security detail for this delicate, eternal process. Their eastward-facing stance now makes a different kind of sense. They were protecting the vulnerable, transformative heart of the operation from any disruptive forces, whether they were vengeful human spirits or rival deities who might seek to interfere with a mortal's audacious bid for godhood. The army's real weapons and perfect formations were there to defend a single, fragile hope that the rivers of mercury would keep flowing and the emperor would finally, triumphantly, cheat death itself. But what if the army was never meant to be seen by the gods at all? Another compelling theory suggests this immense project was less about the next world and more about the present one. The Terracotta Army may have been the ultimate political statement, a piece of grand propaganda carved in clay for his subjects and rivals to behold. Its very existence was a terrifying demonstration of the emperor's absolute power and the inexhaustible resources he commanded. Just consider the logistics. Building this army required the coordinated labor of hundreds of thousands of artisans and workers over nearly 4 decades. This was not a secret project. The sheer scale of the workshops, the endless convoys of materials, the smoke from the kilns firing thousands of life-sized figures, all of it would have been visible for miles. The message to every citizen and noble in the land was unmistakable. The man who can marshal such resources to bury underground can certainly muster an army to crush any dissent. It was a performance of power designed to awe and intimidate, solidifying the Qin dynasty's shaky legitimacy not through spirit worship but through overwhelming, tangible force. The technological mastery on display was itself a form of coercion. The standardized weapons, the advanced bronze casting for the chariots, the intricate assembly line for the soldiers, all of it screamed of a state operating on a level far beyond its rivals. A potential rebel seeing this would understand that the Qin military-industrial complex was unstoppable. By creating a perfect, eternal army, Qin Shi Huang was broadcasting that his earthly rule was equally permanent and unchallengeable. This was a monument built to discourage rebellion by showing everyone exactly what they were up against, a state capable of miracles. So we are left with a haunting duality. Was the army a spiritual force for cosmic conquest, or was it a brilliant, chilling piece of political theater, a permanent threat carved in clay to ensure that the empire he built in life would never fall apart after his death? Perhaps the most profound answer is that it was both. To understand the true revolution of the Terracotta Army, we must first confront the horrifying tradition it replaced. For centuries before the Qin dynasty, the highest honor for a loyal servant or soldier was also a death sentence. This was the practice of retinue sacrifice, a brutal custom where real people were buried alive with their deceased master. When a great ruler or noble died, his entire court could be expected to join him in the tomb. Soldiers to guard him, charioteers to drive for him, concubines to serve him, and officials to counsel him, all were slain or entombed to continue their duties in the afterlife. The scale was staggering. Archaeological excavations of pre-Qin tombs have uncovered mass burial pits containing the skeletons of hundreds of individuals, from young women to armored guards, all arranged in silent, eternal service. This was the grim reality of the world Qin Shi Huang was born into, a world where a man's power was measured in part by how many souls he could take with him. The belief was simple and chilling. For a spirit to have authority in the next world, it needed a real, living retinue. A clay statue could not wield a sword or offer advice. Only a living person possessed a soul that could make the journey. This created a terrifying paradox. The very people who were most loyal to a ruler in life, the core of his power, became the primary victims required to prove his power in death. It was a system that constantly consumed a state's most valuable human capital, a bloody and unsustainable tradition. So when Qin Shi Huang began planning his own eternal resting place, he faced this ancient and gruesome expectation. To follow tradition would mean orchestrating the single largest mass human sacrifice in Chinese history, the slaughter of thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, of his most loyal soldiers, servants, and officials. But the first emperor was not just a traditionalist, he was a radical pragmatist. He had spent his entire life unifying and standardizing a fractured empire, and he understood the sheer wastefulness of such an act. How could his newly forged dynasty endure if he executed its entire administrative and military elite at his funeral? The Terracotta Army was his brilliant and arguably more humane solution. Each unique clay soldier was a symbolic replacement for a living human being. By creating a perfect, lifelike effigy, he was attempting to capture the essence of a soul without having to destroy the body that housed it. He was using the pinnacle of human artistry and industrial production to cheat a brutal spiritual requirement. The army is not just a collection of statues, it is a ghost of a sacrifice that never happened, a legion of clay souls standing in for a legion of flesh and blood ones. This evolution from human sacrifice to symbolic representation marks one of the most significant turning points in ancient history. It was a move that preserved his state's stability while still fulfilling, in the most spectacular way possible, the perceived demands of the spirit world. The empty hands that once held real weapons now seem to hold an even heavier truth, the weight of thousands of lives that were, against all tradition, allowed to go on living. This shift from human sacrifice to symbolic clay soldiers was a revolution in burial practice, but it was not the first time the Chinese had placed guardians in a tomb. To truly grasp the Terracotta Army's radical nature, we must see it alongside the protectors that came before and after. For centuries, Chinese tombs were watched over by a class of figures known as zhenmashu, or tomb-quelling beasts. These were not realistic soldiers, they were mythical, often terrifying, hybrid creatures sculpted from stone or modeled in clay. Imagine a winged lion with a snarling face, a chimera with horns and scales, or a beast with bulging eyes meant to stare down evil spirits. They were powerful, but they were symbols. A zhenmashu was a piece of supernatural armor, a single powerful entity stationed to ward off malevolent forces through its fearsome appearance and mystical nature. They were the ancient equivalent of putting a scarecrow in a field, a solitary figure whose job was to project an aura of dread. The Terracotta Army does the exact opposite. It replaces the single mythical monster with an entire real-world institution. Where a Zhenmashu was a symbol of fear, the Terracotta Legion is a manifestation of bureaucracy and military order. It swaps the magical for the practical, the monstrous for the human. This is not about scaring away ghosts with a scary face. It is about deploying a systematic, administrative solution to the problem of eternal security, using the same tools that won an empire on Earth. The army's power does not come from magic, but from its flawless, overwhelming organization. This is what makes the first emperor's creation so unique in all of human history. Other rulers had guardian statues, but none built a functioning government and a tactical army to scale, designed to operate in perpetuity. The Zhenmashu was a lock on the door. The Terracotta Army was the entire police force, the standing military, and the imperial administration, all buried together. The difference is one of philosophy. The older tradition relied on faith in the supernatural. Qin Shi Huang placed his faith in the one thing that had never failed him, the sheer, unstoppable force of his own military machine, recreated for a war beyond time. All of these grand theories, from cosmic conquest to political propaganda, lead to a single, silent point on the map. The unopened central tomb mound is the heart of this entire enigma, a sealed earthen pyramid that has guarded its occupant for over 2,000 years. This is where Qin Shi Huang himself is believed to rest, and it is the one place that holds the definitive answers to the army's true purpose. Yet it remains untouched, a deliberate choice by modern authorities. The reasons for this caution are as complex as the tomb itself. First is a profound respect for the dead, a cultural imperative against disturbing an emperor's final resting place without overwhelming cause. But this reverence is paired with very real, very modern fears. The technical challenges are immense. The mound is not simply a pile of dirt, it is a massive, engineered structure. Ancient texts and soil samples hint at a complex underground palace, and archaeologists worry that any excavation could destabilize the entire chamber, causing irreparable collapse. They have only one chance to get it right, and the technology to safely explore such a vast, fragile space may not yet exist. Then there are the legends of deadly protections. Historical records speak of crossbow traps rigged to fire automatically at any intruder. While the mechanisms may have decayed, the intent is clear. This tomb was designed to be a fortress. But the most scientifically verified threat is the one that aligns perfectly with the emperor's obsession: mercury. Soil tests around the mound have revealed extraordinarily high concentrations of the toxic liquid metal, up to 100 times the normal background level. This provides startling physical evidence for the ancient descriptions of rivers of mercury flowing inside. To break into that chamber now would be to risk releasing a deadly, volatile poison into the air, endangering both the archaeologists and the local environment. So the mound sits, a tantalizing vault of secrets protected by both ancient ingenuity and modern prudence. Every question we have about the Terracotta Army's ultimate mission, whether it was to guard a transformation, conquer a cosmos, or simply project power, finds its answer not in the pits of soldiers, but here in the silent, toxic heart of the complex. The Emperor's final command remains unread, waiting in the dark beside his body, daring the future to disturb his poisoned, eternal sleep. The only detailed description of the tomb's interior comes from a historian who was not even born when the Emperor died. Sima Qian, writing about a century after Qin Shi Huang's passing during the Han Dynasty, recorded what is considered the most comprehensive account. He described a subterranean palace with a starry ceiling of pearls, a map of the empire on the floor, and 100 rivers of flowing mercury. He also wrote of mechanically triggered crossbows rigged to fire at any intruder who dared to break in. For centuries, these words were treated as legend, a fanciful story passed down through generations. Yet when archaeologists began to study the site, they found themselves confronting an impossible dilemma. Sima Qian's account is both incredibly detailed and deeply problematic. How could a historian from a rival dynasty, one that overthrew the Qin, have known such intimate secrets about a sealed tomb his own people likely never entered? Was he reporting fact, or was he crafting a powerful piece of anti-Qin propaganda, designed to paint the first emperor as a megalomaniacal tyrant obsessed with dark arts? The archaeological evidence from the army pits provides a strange and partial answer. The discovery of tens of thousands of real, functional bronze weapons, including highly sophisticated crossbow triggers, lends startling credibility to the idea of automated traps. The Qin artisans absolutely possessed the mechanical genius to create such deadly devices. More stunningly, scientific soil tests around the central tomb mound have repeatedly confirmed abnormally high concentrations of mercury. This scientific fact aligns perfectly with the ancient tale of mercury rivers, transforming Sima Qian's wildest claim from myth into a plausible, even probable reality. But the archaeological record also diverges sharply from the historical one. Sima Qian makes no mention whatsoever of the Terracotta Army itself. He describes the tomb's incredible interior but is silent on the thousands of life-sized soldiers standing guard less than a mile away. This is a staggering omission. It suggests that either the army was such a closely guarded secret that knowledge of it was lost within a century, or that Sima Qian's sources were incomplete, perhaps relying on the accounts of laborers who worked on the inner tomb but not the outer pits. This glaring gap between the text and the earth forces us to question everything. If the historian could be so right about the mercury, could he also be right about the crossbow traps and the pearled ceilings? Or are we, in our desire for answers, using science to validate an ancient fairy tale? The truth is now locked in a dialogue between a 2,000-year-old text and the silent, patient evidence buried in the soil, each one daring the other to be wrong. This silent standoff between history and science is being probed by technologies that see through the Earth itself. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses of energy deep into the soil, painting a ghostly image of the structures hidden below the central mound. It reveals vast, empty spaces and what appear to be walls and foundations, confirming the presence of a sprawling subterranean palace. Meanwhile, magnetic surveys detect subtle variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by buried features, mapping out the complex layout without ever breaking ground. These remote sensing techniques act like a medical scan for the entire 56-square-kilometer necropolis, allowing archaeologists to diagnose the site's anatomy while leaving the patient completely untouched. The most startling scientific validation, however, comes from a simple and chilling soil test. Researchers have systematically sampled the earth around the tomb mound, analyzing its chemical composition. The results are unequivocal. The mercury concentration in this soil is dramatically high, in some spots measuring 100 times the normal level for this region. This is not a legend anymore, it is a measurable scientific fact. That toxic signature seeping up from below after 2 millennia is powerful physical proof that Sima Qian's account of flowing mercury rivers was not a fanciful invention. Science is thus performing a delicate magic, slowly peeling back the layers of this 2,000-year-old mystery while the tomb itself remains sealed and inviolate. We are learning its secrets not by invading its sanctity, but by listening to the whispers it leaves in the very soil and air. The data builds a picture of an unimaginably ambitious project, a tomb designed as both a cosmic map and a toxic fortress. What other impossible descriptions from that ancient text might be waiting for their moment of scientific corroboration? Yet another theory suggests the army's origins might lie far to the west. A controversial idea proposes that the sudden appearance of life-sized, realistic human sculpture in China could have been sparked by contact with the Hellenistic world. After the death of Alexander the Great, his empire fractured and Greek culture spread deep into Central Asia, with kingdoms established in places like Bactria, not impossibly far from China's borders. The artistic leap is striking. Before the Qin, Chinese funerary art consisted of small, stylized wooden or clay figurines. They were symbolic representations, not portraits. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, comes the Terracotta Army, with its emphasis on anatomical accuracy, realistic proportions, and individualized faces. This dramatic shift, some argue, mirrors the Greek artistic tradition of creating idealized yet naturalistic human forms. Could knowledge of Greek monumental sculpture have traveled east along early Silk Road routes, perhaps with nomadic traders, and inspired the Qin court's artisans? It is a captivating thought, the idea that a spark from the Mediterranean might have helped ignite one of China's most iconic creations. However, most scholars treat this theory with deep skepticism. They point out there is no archaeological evidence, no Greek artifacts, no traces of direct contact in China from this specific period. The development of the terracotta warriors can be seen as a purely internal evolution, a logical peak of Qin's own advanced pottery and bronze casting traditions, combined with an immense imperial will. The move from small figures to life-sized ones was a matter of scaling up a known technology, not importing a foreign one. The individuality of the faces can be explained by the Qin state's bureaucratic obsession with recording and categorizing every person under its rule. So while the Hellenistic influence theory remains a fascinating what-if scenario, a ghost of a possibility on the wind, the true genius behind the Terracotta Legion was likely homegrown, a product of one man's terrifying ambition and the formidable industrial machine he built to serve it. Building this legion was an industrial operation of staggering proportions. The site was not a quiet artistic studio, it was a sprawling factory complex, a production line for immortality covering over 35 square miles. Archaeologists have uncovered the foundations of massive workshops, rows of kilns capable of firing dozens of life-sized figures at once, and pits filled with the raw materials of clay and sand. The entire area would have been a deafening, smoke-choked landscape, humming with the coordinated labor of an estimated 700,000 workers. This was not a part-time project. It consumed nearly 4 decades, spanning the entire second half of the emperor's reign. The sheer manpower involved tells us something crucial. This was not a hobby or a vanity project constructed in a ruler's final years. It was a state priority on par with building the Great Wall or waging a major war, a permanent, funded institution dedicated solely to preparing for death. The emperor was investing the full weight of his empire's resources and its future into this single, subterranean endeavor. To mobilize and sustain such a workforce for so long meant that the army's purpose was not just important, it was existential. The state's very survival, in the emperor's mind, depended on the success of this project. The logistical genius is revealed in the soldiers themselves, in the way they were put together. The artisans perfected a system of modular assembly that balanced incredible efficiency with breathtaking individuality. The bodies, the legs, the torsos, and the arms were all made from a limited set of standardized molds. There were only 8 basic face molds, for instance. This assembly line approach allowed unskilled laborers to produce the core components at an incredible rate, like assembling a vast, complex toy from a set of prefabricated parts. But then the magic happened. Once the basic body was assembled from these standardized pieces, teams of master artists took over. Using wet clay, they would hand-build each soldier's unique features directly onto the molded face. They added ears, sculpted hairstyles, carved wrinkles and expressions, and shaped distinctive mustaches. They used tools to imprint the intricate details of armor lacing and the folds of clothing. This two-step process was the key to the entire endeavor. It allowed for mass production on an unprecedented scale while still achieving the vital, spiritual goal of creating an army of distinct individuals. This was not just an artistic choice, it was a logistical solution to a metaphysical problem. How do you create a soul for a clay soldier? The answer was to build it by hand, one face at a time, ensuring that no two warriors were ever exactly alike. This fusion of industrial efficiency and profound artistry underscores the project's dual nature. It was a feat of bureaucratic management and a work of spiritual creation, all directed towards a single, paramount objective that the emperor believed was worth any cost. This profound silence is broken only by the whisper of a single word. While the warriors themselves stand mute, their weapons speak volumes. Etched onto the blades of swords and the tangs of crossbow triggers are tiny, meticulous characters, the names of the craftsmen who made them and the officials who supervised their work. Lai Wang Gong. These are the signatures of a vast bureaucracy, a system of accountability that ensured every arrowhead was perfect. Yet these inscriptions offer no reason for the army's existence. There is no grand declaration from the emperor, no carved prayer to the gods, no explanation etched into the clay breastplate of a single general. This is the great void at the heart of the mystery. For an emperor who standardized written script across his entire empire, a man who left his edicts carved on mountains for all to see, this omission is deafening. Why would he not leave a single, definitive word to explain his greatest creation? One possibility is that the purpose was universally understood by everyone involved. The concept of a spirit army for the afterlife was so deeply ingrained in the culture that explicitly stating its function would have been as unnecessary as writing instructions on a drinking cup. Its mission was self-evident. The soldiers face east, the direction of the old enemies. They hold real weapons. They are arranged for battle. The message was in their form and their formation, a language of power and intent that everyone could read without a single written character. But there is a more secretive and perhaps more likely explanation. The true, esoteric purpose of the army may have been a state secret of the highest order, known only to the emperor and his most trusted inner circle. Qin Shi Huang was a man obsessed with immortality and cosmic conquest, pursuits that were deeply tied to esoteric Taoist and alchemical knowledge. This was not the kind of information you carved into bronze for future generations to find. It was sacred, powerful, and dangerous. To write it down would be to risk its power being diluted, misunderstood, or worse, used against him in the spirit world. The silence, then, becomes a form of protection. It guards the secret of the Mercury rivers and the celestial ambition, ensuring that only the emperor himself, in his transformed state, would ever fully comprehend the grand design. The army's empty hands and wordless bodies are a perfect cipher, a locked box with the key buried forever with the one man who knew the truth. That silence may be the most important clue of all. The absence of any written declaration suggests the emperor's vision was not a single, fixed plan, but a living project that grew and mutated over the nearly 40 years of its creation. It is entirely possible that the Terracotta Army we know today is not the result of one grand design, but the final, fossilized form of an idea that evolved with the man himself. When Qin Shi Huang first ordered the construction of his mausoleum, he was a young king in his 20s, newly ascended to the throne of Qin. At that stage, his ambitions, while vast, were likely more conventional. The project probably began as a magnificent version of the traditional spirit objects, a grand collection of minki fit for a king. Perhaps the initial plan called for a few hundred life-sized soldiers, a royal guard for the afterlife that would already dwarf anything that had come before. But as the years passed, everything changed. The boy king became the emperor of all China. His power became absolute, and with it his paranoia deepened. Every conquered state, every suppressed rebellion, every assassination attempt he survived added another layer of fear and another reason to expand his eternal security. The project's scale would have swelled in response. What began as a guard of hundreds might have been re-envisioned as a legion of thousands, a force large enough to pacify not just a tomb but an entire spirit kingdom. The most powerful driver of this evolution, however, was his escalating obsession with immortality. In his 40s and 50s, as his health likely declined from the mercury elixirs, his desperation would have peaked. The failure of his earthly alchemists to find the secret of eternal life would have made the afterlife project not just important but critically urgent. This is when the army's purpose may have transformed from a defensive guard into an offensive weapon for cosmic conquest. The addition of the sophisticated combined arms units in Pit 2, the strategic command post in Pit 3, the entire sprawling bureaucracy of officials and entertainers, all these elements feel like later additions, layers of complexity added to a plan that was constantly being upgraded. The necropolis became a backup plan for a man who realized he might not cheat death after all, a consolation prize built on a godlike scale. The sheer logistical evidence supports this. A project of this magnitude could not have been completed in a few years. The workshops were operational for decades, their methods refining and scaling up over time. The army itself is a timeline frozen in clay. You can almost see the progression in the craftsmanship, from the earliest, simpler figures to the later ones with their exquisite, individualized detail. This was not a project with a finished blueprint. It was an organic outgrowth of one man's psyche, a physical manifestation of his growing power, his deepening fears, and his desperate final hope to rule forever. The silent, wordless army is the perfect monument to this evolution because its meaning was never carved in stone. It was molded and remolded in clay, changing as rapidly as the mind of the emperor it was built to serve. Perhaps the most profound answer is that the Terracotta Army was never meant for just one purpose. It was all of these things at once, a multi-layered solution to the emperor's every fear and ambition. Think of it as a master key designed to unlock every door in the afterlife. It was an imperial guard, yes, standing watch over his physical remains. It was a political statement, broadcasting his unchallengeable power to any living soul who knew of its existence. It was a tool for cosmic conquest, its eastward-facing legions ready to subjugate the spirit world. And it was the ultimate security force for the most delicate operation of all, the alchemical transformation happening within the mercury-laced tomb. These were not conflicting ideas in the mind of Qin Shi Huang. They were interconnected layers of a single, all-encompassing plan. His genius and his paranoia lay in preparing for every possible scenario. He could not know the true nature of the afterlife, so he built an army equipped to handle any version of it. If the next world was a mirror of his own, he had his bureaucrats and his soldiers to administer and defend it. If it was a realm of hostile spirits and rival gods, his combined arms formations and real bronze weapons were ready for battle. If the secret to immortality lay in a perpetual alchemical process, his army stood guard to ensure it was never interrupted. This is why the army defies a single, simple explanation. It was designed to be everything, everywhere, all at once for all eternity. Its multifaceted nature is not a sign of confusion, but of breathtaking thoroughness. The emperor was not taking any chances. He was solving for every variable, securing his power across every conceivable plane of existence. The silent, individualized faces of his clay soldiers were not just watching over a tomb. They were watching over a plan so complete, so audacious, that it could only be the work of a man who believed his rule was meant to transcend reality itself. So the silent, eternal question remains, was this clay legion an imperial guard for the afterlife, designed to protect an emperor's spirit in a mirrored world of the dead? Or was it the vanguard of a cosmic conqueror, its eastward-facing formations poised to subjugate the spirit realm itself? Perhaps its true role was to stand guard over a delicate alchemical transformation, protecting the toxic rivers of mercury that were meant to refine a mortal into a god. Or maybe, most pragmatically, it was a monumental piece of political propaganda, a permanent threat carved in clay to intimidate the living and ensure the empire endured long after its founder was gone. These theories are not mutually exclusive. In the mind of a ruler as ambitious and paranoid as Qin Shi Huang, they could all be true at once, layers of a single, all-encompassing plan for eternal dominion. The only person who knew the definitive answer lies at the heart of the unopened central mound, his secrets guarded by poison and time. The silent army keeps its watch, and its ultimate purpose is a story we are still piecing together, one fragment of clay at a time. What do you believe was the true purpose of the Terracotta Army? Share your theories in the comments below, and remember to subscribe as we continue to unravel history's greatest mysteries together.